and News Channel 10-2. I'm David Lovejoy.
Good morning, I'm Megan Collier.
And I'm Chuck Williams.
We're joined right now by Mr. Ken W. Good, a noted Texas bail attorney and board member of the Professional Bondsmen of Texas. Recently in Harris County, their Commissioner's Court voted to pass a request that the bail bond board enact a new rule requiring violent offenders to put up at least 10% of the face amount of their bond in order to be released from jail. And this has caused a whole lot of issues, and it's not just in Harris County. We see some of the same issues right here in Potter and Randall County and other places across Texas. Mr. Good, thank you for joining us this morning.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
I kind of want to give a little bit of context for folks listening out there. Can you kind of talk more about the impact that the bail industry has and really continues to have on our communities, on our society, kind of what the point of bail is?
Well, I think from the public standpoint, they need to understand that the bail industry is the grease that keeps the belt of the criminal justice system moving. You know, on average, like in Harris County, they arrest about 1,000 people a week on just misdemeanors. And so anything that slows down the system is going to cause the courts to back up, and they're going to get a backlog. And then they're continuing to get about 1,000 cases a week. And eventually, if the system continues to slow down, then eventually it's going to shut down, which is essentially what's happened in Harris County. They've created a system that has tied the hands of the judges. And so now the criminal justice system is broken. The DA has issued a report saying crime is increasing because of the bail reform. And so now the Commissioner's Court's looking for someone to blame because they've spent over $100 million. They've promised to spend another 40 to try to fix this system they broke. And so they're looking at the easy target, which is the bail industry, and saying it's their fault when we're not doing anything but what we've always done. We get people to go show up for court. What I tell judges is if you quit caring whether somebody comes to court, then you don't need us, because that's what we do. We do one thing, we do it well. We've been doing it for over 200 years.
You know, it seems to me like most bail is set at that 10% of whatever the judge feels it should be. Isn't that standard and uniform, that 10%?
Well, what the bonding industry charges is a negotiated thing. We don't regulate what's charged in Texas. And, you know, we have people in our community that would love for us to get together as an industry and say, hey, we're going to charge 10%. But you know what? That's called price fixing. And suits are filed across the United States when industries try to price fix. And so, you know, this is kind of like the government is trying to price fix. And that usually causes more problems than it fixes.
Well, go ahead, David.
Chuck.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Let's face it. If I commit a crime, the judge sets my bail at what? $2 or $200. What are my chances of recidivism coming back out into the street? I mean, especially if I've been down 2 or 3 times before, isn't it more than likely I'm going to do it again to come back in this court again?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I think that's one of the points from the district attorney's report in Harris County is if we don't hold people accountable, then they're going to see that as a green light to commit more crime. And so we have to hold people accountable. That's the reason why if you commit more crimes, or if you're a first-time offender, then we have one set of bail because you're less risk. And
Right.
if you go up and you commit more crimes, your criminal history increases, then your bail should increase as well. That's the reason why the Texas legislature stepped in and passed new rules. And the new rules require the review of criminal history before setting bail. And those rules go into effect April 1st. The Harris County criminal justice system is not in compliance. They are not even taking steps to become in compliance in April 1st. That's why this whole thing about blaming the bail industry is just a rabbit trail. It's a distraction. We've got an election coming up in just a few weeks on March the 1st. And so every Democrat judge in Harris County has a Democrat opponent and a Republican opponent. And so this is just a distraction saying, hey, we're doing something. They're not doing anything. They're just, even if they arrest more people, they're taking it to a system that they've spent $100 million to break, and they don't want to fix it.
Mr. Good, let me ask you this. Is this really almost a cost-saving method for the county? Because we know it costs every day we have someone incarcerated, that adds a bill. Is this a way for the counties to say, listen, I don't want to pay that bill. I want to get these folks out of here. Let's just get them going. And is that how the bail reform bill is, not just taking the blame for it, but do you see that as what it might be, a cost saving method?
That's the way it started. It started because, we can save so many dollars a day by not putting somebody in jail. Like in Harris County, there was some litigation, and they were saying we have to settle it, and that's what created this broken system. And they said we have to settle it because we spent $8 million on legal fees. Well, now they've spent over $100 million now, to break the system, and now they're promising to spend $40 million more to try to fix the system they've broken, and they're still not addressing the problem. And the problem is, how do we process large numbers of people through the jail effectively and efficiently? And they've broken the system, and they've tied the hands of judges, and they have no plan on how to do that.
I would say, though, advocates for bail reform say that, cash bail is sort of unfair to, the poorer populations because they can't, quote unquote, buy their way out of jail. And, you certainly see and you hear that, right? Like, I don't know about Harris County, but let's talk about Randall and Potter counties, right? Like, you certainly see some high profile people get out. Mm-hmm. You're thinking, now wait a sec, that was a bad crime, like how is he out, or how is she out, or, and it comes down to the fact that they're able to, quote unquote, buy their way out, right? Mm-hmm. Or no? Argue that for me.
Well, I think that is the argument that we heard. The first argument we heard is bail's unconstitutional. The courts have now held that it's constitutional. So now we get this argument that it's just unfair. And, part of the response that I have to that is, we can't hold everybody. We can't just say you've been arrested. We're going to hold you in jail until your hearing. So we have to make choices. And the better choice is on criminal histories. That's probably the biggest change that's been made in our criminal justice system, and that goes into effect April 1st, and it requires judges to review criminal histories. And if I, as a judge, decide your bail should be a certain amount because of your criminal history, and then whether you can post the bond or not, the question is, has the constitutional requirements been met? And after that, we have a long line of cases that say if you can't afford it, then it's not unconstitutional. And so if we here's the problem I have. When you make this unfairness argument and you say we have to treat everybody the same, that's the result. You tie the hands of the judges. They have to treat everybody the same. And so people who learn how to game the system learn how to game the system. And then you see people who stand on the courthouse steps say, I've been arrested 50 times. I've been arrested 80 times. I've been arrested 90 times. And I get released every time because I know how to game the system. And I love bail reform. And we can't have that. So we should not tie the hands of the judges. We should give them the discretion to set bail based on criminal histories. And you're going to see you're going to see crime go down. You're going to see things get better instead of continuing to get worse.
I'm going to bring up something that may be a little unpopular, but isn't this backed by Black Lives Matter?
Well, I'm going to say that that is a very interesting point that you make. And I do think that you're seeing more in the news about, there was a situation just recently where someone that was a Black Lives Matter supporter went in and shot and tried to kill someone for running for mayor, and he grazed him, hit his sweater, and got close to shooting 4 other people, and he's been charged. And then a Black Lives Matter bail fund bonded him out of jail. And that kind of raises the concern we have been raising, and that is these charitable bail funds need to be regulated, because it's not a far step from, okay, organized crime decides, hey, we can set up our own charitable bail fund and then we'll get our really, really bad guys out of jail if we don't have regulations. And so when you have Black Lives Matter saying our goal is to destroy the private bail industry, when, wait a minute, you're supposed to be a charity, you're supposed to be helping poor people, and they're saying, well, we're creating chaos. The leader of their organization says, we want to create chaos. Well, that's not helpful to the criminal justice system to create chaos. And when you set up systems that tie the hands of the judges, that makes it much worse. And it's not, I don't believe it's a situation where we're just seeing more reporting of crime. You see statistics where crime is up, and it's up in our urban areas, and that's because that's where we're tying the hands of the judges, because that's where we have the problem. how do we process large numbers of people through the jail quickly and efficiently? If we treat everybody fairly, the same, then we don't have time because the counties or the cities don't have the money to magistrate everybody. We need to figure out ways to divert large groups of people who can afford it away from magistration so the judges have the time to concentrate on the people who are claiming poverty or who are truly poor.
The shocking thing, Mr. Good, that I found is I can understand it, writing a ticket for some minor marijuana possession or for some traffic infractions, but there are people who are facing very serious violent crimes, domestic disputes, abuse, and they're getting bond. They're getting out of detention centers and either disappearing or just continuing their mayhem. Is that what is a result of this so-called reform out of Harris County? Is that what we're seeing more and more of? Because we've seen crime rise. You know, stats say they're down. Certain types of crimes are down. From the number of times we have to cover a shooting and deaths here in our state, I don't see that number. But are we letting more violent people out on the street in this system?
I think we are, and let me tell you why. I think, we have a mix of issues. We have crime increasing, especially violent crime, but we also have counties who have budgets. And the cost of incarcerating or keeping somebody in jail is increasing as well, just like every other cost. And so, we have elected officials and judges trying to work together. And if we give them a good intent, which I think most people have, they're trying to work with the system with the money they have so they don't overburden the taxpayers. The problem that I see is accountability. Okay, you give somebody a bond, but if they fail to appear, okay, great. Okay, let's give them a second chance. But you third chance, fourth chance, fifth chance, sixth chance, seventh chance, and that's just on failures to appear. What about crimes? Okay, you have a first-time offender, great. We know how to treat them. But you've got a six-time offender, and you've got three previous convictions in the last 5 years, and you've got 3 pending cases, and that guy fails to appear. Well, the judge has new powers when they fail to appear, or when we surrender a bond. They're not using them, and I think part of it is budgetary concerns, but I think we have some fear that if they do hold people accountable, they might get us under the spotlight for things that they don't want to get under the spotlight, like these new groups that are coming out. And so I think you see a push and pull, and I think that the pendulum has swung too far in the direction of favoring criminals over the victims.
Very interesting topic, Mr. Good. We'll continue to keep looking at this. Thank you for coming in and talking about this. I don't think a lot of people understand the depth of this issue and the danger it's presenting, and how you guys are trying to find an equitable and efficient way to handle this.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure, and good luck to y'all.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate it. We'll have you back soon. We're going to take a quick break right here on the chat. When we come back, Window on a Wider World and Mr. B. King Hill on the chat on Newsday Amarillo and News Channel 10-2.